Hey y'all, it's Sarah, the wine-loving bookworm, back with another book and wine review for your Sunday night. So last weekend we had a housewarming party at our new place, and we got a bunch of wine and liquor and all that stuff. And one of Jim's, my husband's friend's girlfriend, brought me Prosecco. And so I was going to give it a shot because I have been doing this now, I have realized, for just over a year. So that's a long time. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it has. So, little celebration, right? So you're going to have to watch me open this, which is going to be interesting. I really hate opening champagne bottles. I'm always afraid they're going to, pop me in the eye. Let's see if I can do it. Woo! There we go. Okay, so let's pour it and see. Prosecco, if you guys don't know, is a little bit sweeter than champagne. So let's give it a shot. Cheers. Oh, that's really good. That's actually not that sweet. Try it one more time. Yeah, that's one of the driest Proseccos I've actually ever had, which is good. It's called La Bella Prosecco Italian sparkling wine. So that's pretty good. If you're not a fan of the super sweet Proseccos, that is actually a good one to try. Okay, so let's move on to the book. So my friend Sue, who recommended Where the Crawdads Sing, which I did last week, also recommended A Land Remembered to me by Patrick D. Smith. So I borrowed it. And at first, I'll be honest, I saw it's about a guy, a frontiersman in the 1800s, and I'm like, boo, boring. I'm just not, cowboys and Native Americans. I'm not going to say cowboys and Indians. Cowboys and Native Americans, Old West kind of stuff. But this wasn't an Old West book. It actually took place in Florida, which I found fascinating since I live in Florida. And a lot of it took place around Kissimmee, a little bit in Jacksonville area, and then down to Miami, even kind of span the whole area. So I actually surprised myself by really liking this book. So especially if you live in Florida, I think you'll really enjoy it. So it's a historical fiction. I thought just from the very detailed descriptions of the family and the places, it might be a real person, but it wasn't, from what I can tell digging around on the internet. So Patrick D. Smith is an American, and his works were nominated 7 times for the Pulitzer Prize and 5 times for the Nobel Prize for Literature. I've never even heard of this guy. He's pretty impressive. He's born in Missouri, went to the Mississippi. I knew if I wrote MS, I was going to say Missouri, and I'm like, no, I'll remember it was Mississippi. I said Missouri. He went to the University of Mississippi. He moved to Florida in 1966, which is kind of towards the end of the book. It goes to the 1800s, but then it flashes forward to 1966. So I thought that was interesting. And he actually worked at Brevard Community College, which is, not too far from here. It's the beaches that we go to. He wrote many books that took place in Florida, but Land Remembered is his most famous. So it's basically a family from Georgia, a husband, a wife, and a son, and they moved down to Florida. They decided to get out of Georgia. Georgia's becoming, too populated, I guess. I don't know. And it kind of takes place right at the end of the Civil War. There's a little bit of Civil War in the beginning. They really struggle to survive. Now, what I found really interesting is that there were all these wild cows running around the swamps of Florida. I didn't even know that was a thing. But I guess when the Spaniards came first, they brought over cows, and then they just kind of left them there. So the cows kind of fended for themselves in the swamp, and they became, basically feral, which is so funny to me. So the father, Tobias, in this story, he starts wrangling the cows, that starts, and selling them. And he learns along the way. He's a really nice guy, really decent guy. He takes on a ex-slave to help him, just becomes part of the family. He's very friendly with all the Seminoles in the area. So they're swamp cows. And then it's just very Florida in its nature. They talk about hurricanes. A hurricane comes. Hello, now we have weeks of advance notice. Back then it was wow, the weather looks kind of bad, you know? And this big old hurricane came, and they had to like scramble on top of this Indian mound because the water was rising so much, and just sat there for like 8 hours while the hurricane, you know, barricaded down on them, and then had to go wrangle her cows back up because the cows ran off again. And then, you know, talking about how difficult it was, once they'd have like a bunch of cows, they would go over to Punta Rasa, which I think is Punta Gorda now, over on the west coast, and they'd sell them over there. But they'd have to take the cows, and they say you just kind of got to let them move at their own pace and graze as they go. So it took a long time to get from like Kissimmee to Punta Rasa to sell the cows. So lots of stuff would happen. There would be rustlers, I think they call them rustlers, bushwhackers, is that? I don't remember now. But basically people that come and try to steal their cows, shoot them, you know. They got a lot of confrontations like that. There were wolves, like the wolves would come out and try to get the cows, so they'd have to, a lot of times they would build fires like around the cows to keep the wolves out. One time there was like this incredible mass of mosquitoes. This crap scared the crap out of me, you know, because it was like mosquitoes just descended. I guess it was like after a big storm, and the mosquitoes breed in the puddles, and there were so many, it killed cows, and they had to run from them, you know, and they were covered in mosquito bites. Like, I think the one guy ended up getting malaria from it. It's like, holy crap, you know, this is, you know, I would call it the Wild Wild West, but it's Florida, you know, it's like the Florida version of the Wild Wild West. Then they didn't really understand alligators, and he was making the guy that works with him, like, go over there and try to get an alligator because they could get a lot of money for an alligator hide. And the alligators, he's like, they're not even looking at you. Just go up and throw the rope around it. And then they start hissing, and he goes, oh no, they're sleeping. Just go throw the rope around it. You know, it's not sleeping. And the guy gets near it, and they start hissing, and he's like, they're not even looking at you. Just throw the rope. And the thing like lunged at him and like bit off his bottom of his pants. So he's like, I think I'll stick to the cows. I think I'm over the alligators. And then one time the cows wandered off, and they like sunk into this area, into the swamp, and just their little, what do you call, horns, I guess. Let's say antlers, but that's a deer. Horns were sticking out of the mud there, and it was like, holy crap, this is just, I mean, they made it seem like Florida is just the worst place on earth at this time. And then over time, Tobias has a son, and then as the son grows older, and then he's kind of taking over. Zek is his name, like Zach, but with an E. Kind of weird. So then he takes over his father. So it's kind of like follows through the generations. And then Zek has a child named Solomon, and then it ends up with Solomon at the end being an old man. So it kind of goes, you know, through the generations. And when Solomon was in Kissimmee, there was a really big hurricane in 1928 that came over Lake Okeechobee and flooded so bad it was like you were in storm surge on an ocean, like so bad. Killed like 3,000 people. It's like, how many friggin' people were even here in Florida at that time? It killed like everybody. It was a storm that was actually depicted in Their Eyes Were Watching God by, what's her name? Zola? Oh gosh, I should have looked it up. Zora Hurston, which was a great book too. And it was also depicted, it was like old ex-slaves lived in these cabins by the lake, and they all died too during this. So I just remembered it. I think it was one of the worst hurricanes on history. Again, no warning. Like, they just see clouds, all the birds were like flying north, like how ominous is that? And then this storm hits. And then they're also depicted a whole scene with a snowstorm, like full on like 0-degree weather, snow coming down, sleet coming down, killed all their orange trees, killed all the animals. Like, as the snow melted, animals were just dead everywhere. It does not snow in Florida. Like, we've never ever seen even a little bit of snow. That's like a huge snowstorm in central Florida. So that was really interesting. So really great book. When I was Googling some information about it, I found that there's a restaurant in Orlando called A Land Remembered, kind of based on this book or inspired by the book. So, you know, I had to get a reservation. Yeah. So we're going in October. I'll let you know how that was. So I'm really excited about that. But so it's a really good book. I really surprised myself by, you know, liking this book. So Land Remembered by Patrick D. Smith. Pick it up. You know, especially if you're from Florida, you will definitely appreciate it. So next week, I'm going to read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, and it is about the Golden State Killer, a serial killer who was active in California, like mid-70s to mid-80s. So I'm not going to do too much serial killers for you guys, but I got to throw in one once in a while because I love reading about this stuff. So yeah, I'll be reading I'll Be Gone in the Dark. I'm already like a quarter of the way through it. It is fabulous. But that'll be my book for next week. So okay, my computer is about to die, so I'm gonna cut this short now. Pick up A Land Remembered, Patrick D. Smith. Really good. If you're a Florida person, here, lives here, from here, whatever, you're gonna like this book. And La Bella Prosecco, really great, kind of dry Prosecco, not sweet at all, which I love. Have another sip of that. Yeah, that's great. So pick it up. All right, guys, you guys have a great week, and I will see you next weekend. Cheers. I just took a picture of myself. Haha. Okay, let me stop it for real.